Hey everyone, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Mark, and welcome to Youth Talks, the Bunker Edition. Sometimes life gets a little scary and you got to find a safe place. So, Tyler, you look all comfortable there in your happy world, and I find myself kind of buried below ground. So that probably tells you a little bit of something where I'm at these
Yes,
days. But oh well.
yes, and I suppose it's nice to have a bed at least. That doesn't look like you have a bed in your bunker there.
Well, one can wrap themselves in the American flag and stay warm. So,
That's right. Yeah.
the Patriots in the
America. Yeah.
America. Although Patriots, I mean, that reminds me of football, and that's kind of a little changeover. So in fact, actually today we've got some thoughts of bringing a guest on in a little bit, and we're going to talk some football. So that's kind of exciting.
Special guest appearance.
Yeah.
Who's it going to be? You just have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. But hey, we've been talking about top 10 lists. And by the way, we'll take any sort of entry points on what you think this episode should be called. It could be the episode where Mark finally lost it formally. But again, I got my cross, I got my flag. What else do you really need?
Yes.
I got my mug.
The cross and the American flag are basically the same thing,
Well, to some they are. We want to be a little careful. We have a global faith. That's true. But this is America. It's all right. We love our country. I love this place, right?
Right. And it's a Christian nation. So
well, that's kind of a broad definition. There are people that, that get that done right, that live Christianity right, but with a little balance. But I come from a lot of patriots in that sense. I mean, nationalists, if not in a bad way, but people who love America, and I think that's a good thing. I think, it's not about, stomping on the rest of the world, but it's recognizing that we've had a good place in the world. America has looked out, even though at times we've looked out for our own interests, we still have looked out to the world's interests too. And I think that, if anything, is a Christian perspective, to look out to the needs of the world. So you can get behind America that way, I think.
Yeah, in some ways. So
be careful, I'm talking around my mama. I'll come and get you. She says, "You love this country. Don't that boy love this country? What's wrong with him?"
Yeah. I do love America. It's a great country, but it's not without its faults. I'll put it that way. So,
well, okay, but you don't love it as much as I do.
Because maybe not. Yeah, I don't have a flag in my bunker.
You don't have one.
I don't have a bunker, so it's that's not touching the ground, is it? Because that would be sacrilegious.
You don't even know if there is ground in here. This could be dirt floor. This could be like weeds in here, cement.
Yeah, just a big block of cement surrounding you. So
that's right. But I still got a signal though, so that's good.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
the
good.
Essentials.
That's
right?
good. Yeah. Hey, anything funny happened to you this week so far?
Funny,
interesting.
Not particularly.
Really?
It's not that's coming to mind right away.
Okay.
I have some frustrating things that happened.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Some fun things, but I don't know about funny. What do you want to hear about?
I don't know. I'm looking at my my top 10 list that my wife will roll over. Well, I would say roll over in her grave. She's still alive, so that would be like that. I'm in trouble. I'm going to be staying in this bunker for a lot longer with that kind of attitude. But I used to read from my David Letterman's top 10 list years ago, and I literally fell asleep to it for I don't know, like 4 months in a row. And I would get like 3 pages in and I would be asleep every time. So it was like a brand new book every single night. But I had a couple of things. These might seem a little old, but is Delta still fly? Delta Airlines? Do they still have and are there planes that still fly anymore? I mean, is there still airlines? I think that all went away, didn't it? I mean,
they just ceased to exist. Yep. So
I think they all parked in Moses Lake out on the airway. I think we have all the planes in the world are parked out on our landing strip there.
Could be.
Kind of spectacular.
Could be. I haven't seen it yet. I should go check it out. But
well, that's true. If you dare to go out. But this was I think this was making fun of Delta at one point. They were having a little trouble and they had some issues in terms of flight and flying and the rest. And this was the top 10 new advertising slogans for Delta Airlines. Top 10 was "We're Amtrak with wings."
Of course. Does anyone even know what Amtrak is?
You ever riding on a train? What's a train, boy? I think I seen that now. Oh, Western, a Tombstone, they had one. What's a train? This country was
Steam
formed by
power.
trains. Without trains, we would have
Mhm.
gotten across this great land, America.
That's true. That's
Okay,
true.
I gotta wonder. You gotta wonder what's it. I mean, a little maybe drinking coffee or something.
It's a
Number
mystery
9
cup.
was join our frequent near miss program. Number 8 was ask about our out of court settlements. Nice. Number 7, noisy engines. We turn them off.
In the sky while they're flying? Is that
Apparently, I think they had some trouble with an engine falling out.
okay.
Number 6 was complimentary champagne in free fall. So going down.
Yeah, might as
enjoy
well live
the
it up.
enjoy the in-flight movie on the plane next to you. I don't know what that means. Number 4, the kids will love our inflatable slides. That sounds dangerous. This one's even terrorists are afraid to fly with us. So that things are bad. Okay, number 2 is good.
Was that what was that? Hold on, was this post 9/11 or
Oh no, this is like 1985.
85? Oh yeah, okay.
But we had
So,
hijacking. So again, we're pushing the edge here. I understand.
okay.
Number 2, our pilots are terminally ill and have nothing to lose. And number 1, we might be landing on your street. Oh, okay.
There you go.
How about top 10 least popular fairy tales? Do kids still read fairy tales? I mean, you probably haven't started with those yet with Isley fairy tales.
We have, yeah. We've
Oh.
started reading some fairy tales. Her attention span's a little bit shorter when it comes to books, so
Okay.
we can't do like long ones. But she does pretty decent with some of the Disney fairy tales, the movies and
Okay.
things. So
All right.
some of them have kept her attention better than others. But
Okay.
she likes princesses and fairies and fairy tales. So
what about the gingerbread man?
she loves the gingerbread man. So
Top 10, number 10, the gingerbread man chews off his own leg to get out of a bear trap. That's not a popular fairy tale, by the way.
No. Yeah.
Number 9 was Gerardo. No.
Mario, we need you.
Gerardo. And
Gerardo.
All right. How about the ugly duckling who had liposuction and cheek implants? And I don't know if you know who Al Sharpton was. I mean, he was somebody kind of a famous guy in the New York area, and David Letterman had his things with him. He actually had quite a do. So this was the little old lady who lived in Al Sharpton's hair. So. How about the big dragon with intestinal distress for all the IBS sufferers?
Yes.
All right.
Well, that's why he breathes fire, right?
Okay. How about
indigestion?
Well, this one would be this is very fitting in our era. Scrappy, the very contagious monkey.
Yeah.
That's a little too soon, see, but that's a little too old. That's like 30 years ago. Here it was pre-essent. How about the little engine? Oh no, wait, here's the top 10. Number 1, Goldilocks and the Tainted Clams. Okay. Not a very popular fairy tale.
I haven't heard of it.
All right. You don't have to fake laugh anymore. I'll put the book down. I can hear my wife. She's like, I thought he'd stop after like the very first entry, but he kept it going. So
that would be like, I don't know. That'd be the smart thing to do, but why do that?
Oh, I like it. Oh, this title suggestion is good. The one where Tyler and Mark have too much fun.
Hey, I don't know if there is such a thing.
I don't know if there is such a thing.
Yeah.
All right. Very much so.
Yeah. Or
well, hey, we've got.
Go ahead. It could be called the one where the bunkers became real. That was another suggestion. The one where we talk about life, and that's probably a reference to my shirt. If you can see it.
Yeah, we can see that perfectly.
Not like life in general, but yes. But we will talk about life, the conference that we went to, the high schoolers
last summer.
Some of the high schoolers went to last summer. We'll get to that a little bit later, but
yeah,
that's a very feasible title.
Absolutely. Hey, we've got a special guest, new feature on the show, bringing a guest in. So let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Sam Raber is on the line.
Sam Raber, are you there?
I'm here. Here.
You're here.
Let's see if we can bring him in.
Experiencing technical difficulties.
Well,
trying to. There we go.
Sam.
Oh, hey.
Hello, everybody.
There's Sam. Hey, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you.
Good. Yes, good to see you too. I saw you not too long ago.
That's true. I see you like all the time. I don't know what
Yes,
you think about my
yes, we live
bunker life.
we live in the same house.
Well, yeah.
I
Are you
would
surprised?
I hope to see you.
Yeah. Are you surprised I ended up in a bunker?
No, not surprised.
I mean, you've been with me for a number of years now, so
No, that seems like something in your wheelhouse of things that you would pull out just for some occasion such as this. You would have
yeah.
somewhere that you told no one about that you could go for safety for a
Mhm.
bunker.
Right.
Yes.
That's true. You know,
Including your
my
family. Yeah.
my mother, your grandmother, has talked about, in case it all gets bad, we got to go up north to the cabin. I
Yep.
can't say that's an
Oh,
undisclosed location, by the way, for you people out there.
yes, that's on our top 3 list of things of always mentioning to me. If you ever need to go somewhere, go to the cabin. It's always open.
Well, that's good though. That's
Well,
good.
if you guys,
I appreciate that.
yeah, if some of you haven't figured it out yet, Sam and Mark are related. They are from the same family, cut from the same cloth. And
Mhm.
yes, Sam is Mark's son.
Mhm.
And so,
That's
Sam,
right.
glad
Yes.
you're with us today. Thanks for
Yeah.
joining
Yeah,
us.
thanks for
and
having
being
me,
part
Tyler.
of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, yeah, I was saying this is, I mean, the very reason that you're here is, first thing I'd like to ask you about is, you know, you have been a student at Whitworth. This is your second year there at Whitworth University in Spokane, Washington. Go
Yeah, I got my
Bucks.
hat on.
There you go. Proud of you there, and learning a lot and growing a lot. But you have the challenging experience of having been at school, beginning to really connect, and now you find yourself at home on kind of a lockdown from that. So what's that been like for you? You know, you had this, you know, the start of this semester and a lot of the excitement of that, and now being back home. What's been challenging or interesting about all of this experience for you?
Well, the whole college thing is, yeah, I miss being on campus and just being close to all my friends and, right in the same mile vicinity of everybody that I like to hang out with, all of being in the same place, being on campus. But the hardest thing really has been the way that my own time is getting sort of dictated for me. At college, I got to choose what days I did certain work, other than when I went to classes, how I spent my time working for those classes, with getting to go work out, getting to go eat with my friends, getting to go see movies, doing other stuff on the weekends too. But now you're kind of locked into one way of doing every day. You kind of got to get up, do the stuff you got to do, and then sit around your house and do not much else. So I think the hardest part is finally getting that freedom after 18 years of living in the same house. Not that it was terrible, but it was. But really, suddenly having that freedom taken away, I think that was the hardest part.
Well, that's a good point. I think there's more than one, more than 10, more than 100, more than 1,000 students that could concur with that. You know, all the college students, but even high school students, you know, had a certain routine and ability to kind of be out and about. And you know, I think I alluded to that, and we may get to that later. But you know, in the message, part of the American culture and world culture is that we train kids to be independent. You know, we're always, you know, teaching them new things because we believe and hope that they will be able to go out on their own and have their own life. And so we've kind of, you know, we do that, and suddenly now we are in this world where no one really has their own life anymore. They really can't do anything. So
yeah,
kind of an interesting time. So I appreciate that. I think it's the part for us that's been interesting is to kind of bring everybody back together again. And we actually have an interesting challenge, not challenge, but an interesting thing we're going to try to do and initiate tonight. I was trying to be the good dad and find some way to bring the family together. I suggest that we do like a family reading time, you know, like it's 1932 and we only have the radio to listen to or something. So I said, let's find a book, and then we're going to tonight for, well, hopefully more than 5 minutes, we're going to read, somebody's going to read one book, you know, and we're all going to start taking turns to read it night by night for maybe a certain period of time and just kind of experience a novel together in sort of an oral form. So we'll see. Sam, what do you think about Pops's opportunity to kind of bring the family together?
Hey, I brought some books up too, so I like the idea. I'm not against it by any means, which sounds like something foreign for someone of my age to say that I actually like books.
Right.
But
I'm surprised you know what those are, Sam. That's great.
I'm surprised too. I haven't read one in however many, a lot of years. I haven't been around that long and still haven't read many books.
We ain't been around that many years, so it's been a decades, man, since I read a book.
I still can't even say my life has been 2 decades. Barely. I'm getting closer, but
I know you got a birthday
Decade
coming
and-
up this month here in
I
May. You're
know.
going to be 2 decades old. So,
Yes.
so do you think your mother and your sister are excited about the book reading event?
I can. Don't make me speak for them. That's a
Okay.
that's a bad that's a
That's good.
bad
That's
it's
good
a
on your
recipe for
part.
disaster.
What?
All right. Well, I think you can live by that
What?
advice. Definitely. Definitely.
Oh,
Don't speak.
no.
Don't speak
Yeah.
for others. Yeah.
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 Yeah. I
Sam,
think it's
I
good.
was wondering. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say to you, you've had this kind of new opportunity again. And we've talked about it a little bit, but that chance just to be routinely together, which normally, Tiffany and you are both working and Isley's doing the daycare to work through all that, but you really have this kind of time together. And I know it's been kind of cool, to reform it around that for you guys.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed the time together, and it's a little bit tricky to balance working from home, both of us, and
Mhm.
having a toddler in the house. Just making sure that her needs are met, and she's at a stage where she's kind of attached more so than she would be otherwise,
Uh-huh.
and so it can get a little bit difficult, a little bit tricky, but really, it's kind of a cool thing that she wants to be with us,
Mhm.
and that she wants to be right next to us wherever we are and doing whatever
Mhm.
we're doing. She wants to be part of that, or she wants us to come do what she's doing, and
Right.
it's kind of it makes you feel good as a dad,
Yeah.
so because I know
Mhm.
it's a contrast to what Sam you were saying of how you enjoy the freedom of being out on your own, and going off to college and having the freedom to do what you want when you want, right? But
Right.
this is a different stage of life with my daughter, and so but it is kind of fun. So, and I know it won't last forever, so I'll take it while I can get it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I might spend more time in the bunker.
That's right.
Otherwise, that governor's going to come for me or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but he doesn't know. He probably can find my IP address. They're probably on their way to where I'm at right now. So I should be careful with what I say.
Yeah.
Hey, Sammy, we were talking last week. This is a strange world with no live sporting events of any kind practically. But last weekend, starting on Thursday, we had, which I think it was like 55 million people.
Over the course of 3 days,
people tuned in for the draft, the NFL draft, where it's not actually a sporting event. It's like people, aligning and assorting players to new teams by how they pick. So we want to talk a little bit about football, the draft. I know you have some interest, a great deal of interest in sports and events and things. And by the way, I wanted to just mention, which is a neat family story, is that maybe I don't even know all the details of really now because we've talked more about explaining the past. But when you started reading, the real interest was to look at the sports page and to begin looking at the numbers and all of that. And I always wanted to. I've asked you before, but I think it was interesting for you why back all those years ago when you're like 3 years old to be looking at box scores and stuff. And what was was that just the order of that was appealing to you all those years ago?
I guess maybe I had saw it on television or something. I was not particularly conscious at 3 years old. It's sort of like that feeling when you get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. Like that's kind of how I walked around all the time as a 3-year-old. That sort of my eyes are kind of open, but I can't really see anything kind of feeling. But really, I think it was something that sort of how I think, Tyler, you were talking about how Isley wants you guys to do what she's doing. It was something that I saw, I think maybe you and Grandpa and other people doing, the people in the family doing, they were reading that. And I particularly, because sports usually had the biggest image and one that I could see a basketball player, a football player, a baseball player, whatever. I could see that on there. And I think more than what was in the page, I was more interested in the activity of doing it. And sports just happened to be the one that I could really get from the earliest of age, because numbers are simple. They're one little digit and you can kind of put them all together after you know what they are. So yeah, I think that's sort of what it came from, seeing you guys and finding my own interest. But yeah.
So I had some questions. So the draft, this year, you got your first round. There was all the speculation, on how that would lay out and player wise and, teams and especially locally. We were talking a little bit about the people, the interest people have in sporting teams. And around here, a lot of people are Seahawk fans. We were talking a little bit earlier about the Seahawks choice in the first round. And there was a bit of grumbling about that. Tell me a little bit about your opinion of that, of the player that they had, that the linebacker that they chose, and why, what's going on there for them that might educate some people in a general sense about why teams pick the way they do.
Yeah. So something that often sports teams will do is they don't really have the same opinion as all of like the public experts who are making their own mock drafts, big boards, and all the other jargon you hear in sports media for their own opinion, because that's what it really comes down to. It's the team and their scouting group of scouts and the coaches and the GM. They have their own big boards that we don't ever get to see. So what the rumblings have been from around anyone in the Seahawks organization is that they felt that this player, who was rated, Jordan Brooks, an outside linebacker from Texas Tech, was rated a lot lower on most people's boards than he was on theirs. At their point in the draft, at 27, there was no opportunity to trade back. No other teams were looking for the pick. And this was the best player who most fit the need of what they were looking for on their roster at that point in time. And there's different things such as scheme fits and more specific football things that make sense as you look deeper into the pick. But as a general rule, there's sort of a hierarchy of how these NFL teams build these draft boards. Now, there's what I like to call transcendent talent, where they're just so good that you just have to, if they're there, you got to draft them. Someone like a Chase Young, even though he was considered by many to be have the most potential of anyone in this draft, any team, if they would have had the chance to take him, would have taken him, except for the Bengals, who happen to have a bigger need. But Jordan Brooks is met by the Seahawks with, they think he has its incredible talent to fit a need in their system, which is the second most important thing. Do you fit and do you have talent? And the Seahawks are looking at different contract things and age things with their linebacking core that won't be resolved after this season. So they thought, let's take a high upside guy in the first round who we'll have for 5 years and just be able to, mold him in the form of a Bobby Wagner type to play alongside him. And we won't have to pay him a ton of money because we got him at the end of the first round. And so, yeah, they're looking for need really and a scheme fit. And that's some more deeper football stuff. But if you look for it, it's there. It'll tell you that it's there. But
right. That's good. That's interesting.
And I would think Pete Carroll's track record kind of speaks for itself, because he's done a pretty good job of drafting players over the years. And Richard Sherman comes to mind too, because he was a wide receiver coming out of Stanford, right? And so they changed him over to cornerback, and look at how good he's been.
That turned out all right.
So, yes, it certainly turned out all right.
I think that's difficult though. Sam, you mentioned transcendent talent. That guy that is just super. That really just has that. You can see right away he's going to, be somebody that's special. And by the time you get to the end of the first round, it's pretty difficult because there's been lots of stories. You look at historic drafts and you go from 20 to 32 all the time. And some of those guys turn out to be great. And a lot of those guys don't turn out to be great players. They're okay. It's not that they're bad. Obviously they're great players, but not pro players, not talents. And that's where then a lot of times guys show up in later rounds to be something special. I was wondering too about, there was a bit going on in the Green Bay world with the Jordan Love pick. I had thinking about Green Bay, a lot of people would remember last year that they were pretty close to getting the Super Bowl. You got Aaron Rodgers, who still got some life left in him. They were lacking wide receiver talent there. And so everybody's going, you got to be picking. This is the draft. It's got more wide receivers than any in recent years. And you're like, we got to pick this wide receiver. And they didn't. What's going on? Do you have some sense of what's going on there maybe in the Green Bay world?
Yeah, a little bit. I think it was Jimmy Johnson who once said the most important position in football is a quarterback, and the second most important position is the backup quarterback. I think that was him. I may be misquoting somebody, but there is a quote out there that says that, and it's typically revered by most people to have, some value, but really took on a different meaning after in 2017 when Nick Foles took over for the injured Carson Wentz and led the Eagles to a Super Bowl on the backs of a great roster, great offensive line, and other things. But it really showed the value that a backup quarterback can have, because you never need one until you need it.
Right.
You if the quarterback is never injured, then you don't need a backup quarterback, but you don't know when he's going to get hurt. Football is a tough game. But I think what they're looking at is they see a guy in Jordan Love who has elements, who has the possibility, has the potential to be that transcendent talent. He's a top 15 talent guy, but he's only going to fit, as most quarterbacks do, in the right system. Because most certain quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill this season comes to mind, where he was forced to be a pass-first pocket passer in Miami. Didn't work. Tried it for 4 years, 5 years with Adam Gase, different guys, didn't work. Then they move him to Tennessee, where he's got a solid run game and a good offensive line where he can be a play action, move the pocket a little, and kind of make his own play off of the run game as he goes. And he was the second highest rated quarterback over the second half of the 2019 season. So he really showed that in the right system, the quarterback will be able to succeed, whereas other cases they might not. But the issue with the
I just want to let me interrupt you for a second there on Tannehill. By the way, he was special on our fantasy team.
Yes, he was.
I had no thoughts of Ryan Tannehill, but you did because we were partnering together. So well done there.
Yes.
So go ahead, continue. I was in.
Oh yeah. No. So the thing about wide receivers is the best of the West wide receivers get drafted early. Now, from anywhere from about 20 to 32, like you were mentioning earlier, it's kind of hit and miss. It's maybe 2 out of every 5 receivers really returns the value of their pick. And so what Green Bay is saying, we don't know if we feel that none of the guys here are going to be they may have the potential to be better, but we don't think they will be any better than guys we already have on our roster. But we think Jordan Love can beat Aaron Rodgers what Aaron Rodgers was to Brett Favre. He can learn, he can adapt, and we can grow him in our system. And then 3 years down the road, we're going to have a quarterback reign in Green Bay where we only have 3 starting quarterbacks, except for injury, over 50 years, which would be the most valuable thing a team could ever have in terms of longevity and success.
Right. That seems to be a bit, though. I mean, are they going to be able to keep Aaron Rodgers happy because, he's a little disappointed that they didn't add for him? I mean, that's a potential, hornet's nest, I think, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You want to appease the starting quarterback you're paying $30 million a year to in an extension. Right. But the thing with Aaron Rodgers is the thing with any great quarterback is he makes or breaks the guys that are around him. Yeah, you might give a guy, if he has a second round talent, he might do a little bit more than what he's going to do with a fourth round talent. But the issue with Rodgers is he doesn't need weapons. He needs good hands. He had, I think, drop passes. He had like 680 yards lost to drop passes approximately last year. And then the average in the league was 280. So over 400 yards, which is the equivalent of maybe 4 or 5 touchdown drives or something like that along those lines. He lost. So he just needs sure-handed guys. He doesn't need the most talent. He's never really needed that. I mean, they turned Jordy Nelson into a big dude, James Jones, Randall Cobb, these other names that haven't done much anywhere else. But when Aaron Rodgers was thrown to him, they were pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So why not get him some more sure hands in the draft? I mean, if the guys that were dropping all those passes, you
see, it's not the Jordan Love pick I don't like. It's the A.J. Dillon from Boston College. I mean, a running back who can only run is not what Aaron Rodgers needed at this point. Yeah. There were many other players they could have used that pick on, but Jordan Love, it shows that they are really committed to finding the right quarterback. And as a franchise, that has to be your number one goal all the time, is finding the guy. Because Aaron Rodgers could have 1 year left. He could have 5, 10. It doesn't matter how many he has left. You have to be ready with the next guy, whenever it is that he extends his welcome at that point.
Well, I want to appreciate the comment, Sam. And in all honesty, we could sit here and talk about football for the entire day, but I have a feeling that some of our audience isn't as enamored with sports as we are. What's that?
But before we move off of football, I did want to get your take on the Bills draft, Sam. Put you on the spot.
Oh, the Bills. The Bills. Oh, you think I don't know about the Bills draft? Come on, Tyler.
Well, I just want to see, just if you just give a grade letter, see what they did. You don't have to go into great detail because I know.
I like the first 2 picks they made. Both of those picks, I think they got great value on. I'd say I give them a solid B plus A minus, which is a lot higher than average. So they had a solid draft.
I'll take it. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Thanks for entertaining me there.
One thing I wanted to additional thing, and I sure appreciate your time with us, and again, like I said, we could talk for hours about these certain things. But you had your own experience with our Life conference back in 2016, and so you were just 16 years old. You hadn't always been part of the youth group, and I think going along on that trip, I don't know if I pushed you along or how that really came about, but I think that there was some significance for you just going to it and some connection. Can you speak a little bit to your own life experience in Kansas City in 2016, maybe some meaningful things that you still hold on to or that occurred during that time or that were connective even for you?
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience because it's like you said, it was in the summer, and I that was really before I'd gotten a real like summer job. So I was kind of just being the kid still in the summer. What that did was it sort of opened me up to the realization that there are just a lot of people with the same questions and the same wonders and the same worries that I have in Moses Lake. You had different people like I think there was some question and answer time in small groups, and even from our own group, realizing that there are people around the area which I live that have some of the same questions and worries about, what is God, what is love, what does this all mean, what's really going on with all of this. And I think that was just the more realizing the place of coming about realizing that there were people just like me everywhere else. Not that they had the same experience or necessarily had the same views on everything, but they were asking the same kinds of questions. And that made it easy for me to step outside of my comfort zone a little and try to be more vulnerable in a place where I felt safe to do so because other people had shown me that it was okay to do so.
Uh-huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
Glad. Yeah. That has been for lots of people, the life experience in the Alliance denomination has been a big deal. And I'm glad that it had that meaning for you that way, and just appreciate your journey and our life together. So, Sammy, I will see you a little bit later, but I want to thank you a million times over for being my son, but also being a guest on the show. And thank you. And we'll see about bringing you back another time, but I appreciate all your knowledge.
We'll talk baseball next week.
We'll talk baseball.
All right, I'm ready to talk about that.
All right. Take care,
thanks,
buddy.
Sam.
All right, thanks for having me, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's a good segue for us to kind of do some maybe we'll fall into the life world a little bit before we get to some questions about the talk from last week. We had I think at least a video question or highlight from McKenna had something for us.
Yeah. So Mario, we're switching up things on you here. So we originally said that we'd do this towards the end, but that's okay. Right. And just for those that aren't aware, Life 2019 is a triannual, I guess it would be, conference that the Christian Missionary Alliance puts on for youth. And so we got to check that out last summer, 2019. And so I went down to Orlando, and I don't know. I just had the weird feeling like, did you already explain this? And I'm repeating it, but I wasn't listening. Yeah.
Oh, no, I don't think, not really. Cause that was Kansas City. I was just alluding to that, but there was over 6,000 students, mostly of high school age is really where it is. From the Alliance denomination from all over the world there in Orlando. And we were there for a number of days, just experiencing worship and speakers and little sub seminars and small group stuff and just each other and enjoying that time. So it's pretty impactful. It's kind of that, what you described, sort of that mountaintop experience, for most people that go there. I mean, it really is. So why don't we, if we've got McKenna's life one, why don't we run that? I think she talks a little bit about her experience and one of the highlights for her.
Hey everyone! So it was so hard for me to pick just one highlight from Life 2019. This week of Life Replay has brought back so many memories and points that I never want to forget, and it's been so refreshing and rejuvenating, and I'll never forget, the service project where I got to serve with my team, and the worship was amazing. I could go on and on about that. It was having 6,000 believers, worshiping the same God in one place. It was just something I cannot explain. Feeling His presence was amazing. But I knew that I wanted to talk about something specific when I watched Awaken to Community by Megan Marshman. And she said one specific thing that resonated with me this morning, just as it did back at Life. And I remember hearing her say, "You were created on purpose with a purpose." And that hit me so hard because I've been struggling to find my purpose during this time. Like, God, what's my purpose here at home? Like, I can't go anywhere, so what's my purpose? But my highlight is that after I heard that, I took that to the prayer experience, and I prayed about it at Life, and I said, God, what's my purpose? I'm still trying to figure that out. I haven't figured fully out what is my purpose, but I found a small part of it when I was at Life. And I was praying over these people. I was praying over people from different countries and missionaries and just people that were on my heart. And the Lord spoke to me and he told me, you know, McKenna, I want you to do mission work. I think you need to do mission work. And I took that back to my team that night, and I remember telling them in tears, you know, God spoke to me and told me he wants me to do missions. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if he wants me to be a missionary here at home or if that looks like me going overseas. I don't know what that looks like. But I keep praying about it, and that was my highlight, because there's something special about hearing God speak to you for the first time, you feel like. And it was just amazing. And so if you can go to Life, do it, because God speaks to you and works through you in mighty ways while you're there. And it's just an awe-inspiring experience. So thank you. God speaks to you.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty great. I love that, you know, as McKenna shares kind of about, you know, a specific speaker. And it's funny sometimes, you know, a person just says one specific thing to you and that kind of locks it in. And I think sometimes in our life, you know, we underestimate the influence or impact we can have on people's lives. We'll say things like, well, what does it matter what I say? And yet, you know, one directed statement, one powerful statement can unlock the door for another person. So I like that, where she's highlighting Megan's statement that you were created on purpose with a purpose. So Tyler, what do you think about a statement like that? Where does that fit? I mean, do you agree with that carte blanche, or is there some nuance to a statement like that for you? Created on purpose with a purpose?
Yeah, I think it's pretty right on. You know, just thinking of who God is and his creative ability and just his omniscience and just the way that, you know, he's created each one of us uniquely. And you know, there's what, 7-8 billion people on the earth right now, and however many more billions that have existed before us, you know, that have now passed. Like, to think that, you know, God knows each and every one of us in that way, and has created each and every one of us. I think there is purpose for each and every one of us, and that's something that I would say. I guess I agree with. Yeah, carte blanche. Just like that's a pretty powerful statement, and it's something that I think gives meaning and worth and dignity to each and every human that lives or has ever lived or that ever will live, you know. And so that's something that um you know, now I guess it's another question to, well, what is my purpose? Right, that's another can of worms there. That how do we go about figuring that out? Which, I mean, maybe we can talk about that too. But I do, just in general, I agree with it, and think that was a particularly powerful uh, message that Megan gave that week. So
Yeah, I think the thing that I come with is you're created on purpose. So that speaks again to God's knowledge that he knows everybody. And that's a mind-blowing thing, to think that God has the ability to have all of those things in mind, to have you in mind specifically, and created on purpose for a purpose, or with a purpose in mind. And I think the problem sometimes run in is our understanding of what's the purpose, because often we'll think of it, well, that means I'm supposed to be a chemical engineer. I'm supposed to be a high school teacher. I'm supposed to be a pro quarterback. I'm supposed to be this. And I think that sometimes is the problem, because I don't think it's as clear in that way, that sort of the vocation we have, that's really what that's about. Not that that's unimportant, because I think that can be. But I think the bigger purpose, with a purpose, if we think of why we're here, the chief, in the catechism world, the chief aim of man is to glorify God. And I think if we think about it in those purposes, that the world isn't about me. I'm not the center of all the world. All of the world isn't created so that I might have purpose. It's about me finding my purpose within God's larger purpose, that he has a bigger purpose, that he knows me specifically to be part of the bigger purpose that he has. And so then it can be, it's not so much that, because I might be very successful in life according to the world, or unsuccessful. But if I have the opportunity to be loving towards others, if I have an opportunity to serve and care and share the message of God, then I might be very successful in the way God looks at it. But from the world's perspective, it may not be at all. So that's the hard part sometimes, is helping people have a proper perspective on what purpose, and you mentioned that, what it looks like in this life.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it speaks a little bit to where we place our identity when we
Mhm.
when we have that mindset of, well, my purpose is wrapped up in what I do, my vocation, my, what I want to be when I grow up. And
Right.
and that, like you said, that's important. And sometimes there are specific things that God wants us to do as a career, and that's my experience. And that was something that I went on a mission trip to Guatemala when I was. Let's see, it was just before my senior year, the summer before my senior year in high school. And the Lord placed a clear call on my life, kind of similar to what McKenna was describing, where I heard the Lord speak and say, Tyler, I want you to be a pastor, and I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what kind of pastor, because I knew there was different pastors and, different kinds of ministry and stuff.
Mhm.
But that was, at that point, that was something that God made clear as the direction to go for my life as far as a career goes, or a vocation. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
but when we get into that mindset of like, I am what I do,
Right.
when I introduce myself, um sometimes I introduce myself as, hi, I'm Tyler, I'm a pastor, I'm a youth pastor. And I was like, well, as I think about that, that's probably not the best thing to do, because then I'm immediately tying my own identity to um, that job, that role that I have, and where that is something God has called me to. If there's some day where I'm not a youth pastor, I hope and would think that I would still want to have like a pastoral role in people's lives, so I don't know. Identity. I mean, I probably went off on a little bit of a rabbit trail there, but,
Well, I
but
don't know.
it's
I
one of
think
those
there's
things
I
that,
think there's just
yeah.
that there's a bit of an evolution in our life, a growth, in it as to what that means. And
Hmm.
I think part of the interesting thing about being young is, there's a lot of openness to those ideas. And as we
Hmm.
go along, there's, clarity comes in certain ways. Wisdom falls in our life in a certain way, and we begin to look at things differently. The things that we
Hmm.
thought were most important at one point aren't so important. We
Yeah.
don't hold on to those anymore. But I think that's what happens with growing up and in some ways growing old, because we realize more and more that we have very little ability to hold on to this life and this world.
Hmm.
And I think that's, David the psalmist was writing those sorts of things, Solomon, writing about the vapor, and the quickness of life and the inability to hold on to it. It kind of just goes through your hands. And so then that gets you to a point of going, I'm gonna be present in what I'm doing today. I want to be active and I want to be listening. And so I
Hmm.
like just, McKenna's probably an admonition to pull out of that is it just to listen for the voice of the Lord in what you
Hmm.
do all the time and say, that's the voice I want to listen
Hmm.
to. And it doesn't have to be for just one big career thing. It's about, what am I going to do today? Should I stop here? Should I go here? Should I talk to this person? What should I
Hmm.
say? Lord, help me to say what you would say and be
Yeah.
present in all of the situations we have in life to say, Lord, I want you to be in all of them. And some people might think, oh, that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not what God is like. He's not concerned. You follow him, but then you just live your life. And I would tell you, if this God can keep in mind 8 billion people all at once and create all of them, he has no problem following along you with each detail of your life, with
Yeah.
each moment of your life, learning to live in dependence upon him. Now, am I doing that all the time? No. But certainly that is what I have heard over and over again from trusted advisors and mentors in my life, about learning to depend on the Lord moment by moment. So that's a great statement. I'm glad for you, McKenna. I
Hmm.
know there's lots of other highlights too. Um,
Yeah.
we probably could
Mark,
take
what
a.
was? Well, I was wanting to hear a little bit of maybe one of the highlights you had from that week, if you can remember back a year ago.
Well,
Putting you on the spot a little bit here too. So
that's all right. Yeah, man. There, I always have an interesting time going on things like that because whenever I leave like that, you sort of learn to live in your own, your own head and your own space. Um, who was the spoken word artist? Um,
propaganda.
Propaganda. He
Hmm.
talked about that living in your own headspace and your own. And I sort of connected with the way a lot of how he talked about that because I've had that way of thinking internally, introspectively thinking. But there was a moment there where I had where I had some connection with a neat person in my life as we talked about, how I related to the to the approval or disapproval of others. And there was a moment in there where I had to realize, who I was outside of that. That regardless of whether people have a high opinion of me or not, isn't really the point. That I have a message to give, and I have to understand that there's, whether, no matter what I do, there's going to be people that appreciate it and people that don't care for it. But it doesn't really matter. I still have to be faithful to who I am. And because oftentimes I could be, depending on if somebody in my life growing up, if somebody cast aversion on me or dispersion on me in some way, I was pretty quick to just shut down and say, that's fine. Okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna reach out anymore. You've put up this barrier to me in some way, or you've done whatever, and so I'm done with you. I don't have any more regard for you. And this particular person was good to point out, lovingly, the value that I had a greater purpose, and that you're going to face sometimes difficult and people that don't really care for you. But that's okay. That's just the way it is. You have to understand to be faithful to the road that you're on. And there's a bigger purpose. And again, I was just reading about Paul this morning, Apostle Paul, and he had more troubles. When you read in 2 Corinthians, he had more difficulties than anyone could almost ever face in this life. But that did not stop him from the mission that he had, the goal and the purpose that God had given him to share the word. He said, it doesn't matter. He said, he says in there, I've been beaten with the whip, with the 39 lashes 3 different times in my life. 4 times actually, and 3 times with rods. But I thought about that. I mean, when they used to whip them, it was like whipping them almost unto death. They hit them so hard and tore their back up so bad that they almost died. And that happened to him 3 or 4 different times in his life. And he said, but that's not going to stop me. And he didn't make it a big point, except in that point, he said, hey, sometimes you don't think I know what I'm talking about. I'm going to tell you, I've been through a lot. So that was a big moment for me, and I will not forget the particular person that pointed that out to me and shared that with love and walked with me in that little journey. So it was a good moment for us. So
That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
How about for you?
Yeah, there was a lot, so it's hard to pick one. And Propaganda's message that morning was one that particularly inspired just kind of a renewed wonder for who God is, and just kind of being in awe of God. And yeah, and then there was a what they call it, the not the prayer experience, but the other one. What do you remember what that was called? I'm spacing on it. The justice experience. Yeah. And that was something that was pretty powerful. And it was like they had a whole big room set up with different things that you walk through, and you could kind of get a taste of what some of the poor, the less fortunate, and the more vulnerable people in the world are experiencing. And so there are things about kids that were kidnapped and forced to become an army, basically a soldier, right? And there's others that were forced into sex slavery, and then just even just child labor and everything, and just kind of right, and all that stuff of like, okay, I mean, and the whole point was just to get you to think about there's all these injustices in the world that are happening, and to be honest, a lot of it has to do with people wanting to make money, off of that, and taking advantage of those that aren't able to speak up for themselves or defend themselves, and so that was a particularly powerful experience that I walked away from just thinking, okay, I don't really know what I can do with this, but there's got to be something. And so even in just small ways of thinking about like where I'm buying clothes from, and are those clothes that were made by kids in Cambodia or something like that, that are forced to work 12 hours in a sweatshop, kind of a thing. Just some little things like that, that's, still even almost a year later, I'm like, what, that seems like such a big thing that I don't really know how to bring it down sometimes, and say, what's one practical thing that I can do with that, or do about that to bring change. And so, but that was a particularly powerful experience, and a highlight for me for sure. So
yeah, I think it's even interesting is that as we spend so much effort thinking about the coronavirus and around the world and how that shut everything down, and you're like, there's all these kids and all these women exploited all over the place, and we don't do anything about it. Not really. I
Yep.
mean, when you think about what really an injustice is, and I mean, I'm not for saying everybody should just go around and get everybody sick. I mean, I get that. I'm not
Mhm.
heartless like that, but I think about the effort that we put into that. I mean, we've literally shut down our country, shutting down the whole world over that, because we're so we want, like, I don't, no one should die, or we want to protect ourselves so much, but all those injustices happen all the time. So yeah, I don't know. I think we got to pray more and trust the Lord. And individually, you got to answer the call. I mean, if there's a call to go, you do it. It doesn't mean you can change the whole world, but maybe you can do one thing. And that's the one thing that will give you the peace of mind and heart to live. If you've got a burden, I talked to somebody the other day, last week, and prayed with them. They had a burden to do something that had been on their heart, and they hadn't answered it yet, and that didn't go away. He was just digging at, saying, I'm putting this on your heart. I want you to do something. And so when you hear that, when you feel that, you need to respond and just be open to it. Say, Lord, I don't know how it's going to be, but I'll do it. Whatever you want, I'll go do it. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I'll take steps. And I think as you do that, you'll find peace. And without it, if you love the Lord and he's asking you to do something and you don't do it, you're not going to have any peace. It's
Right.
going to be you're going to be miserable about it until you just say, okay, I give up.
Yeah.
I'll do what you want me
Right.
to do.
Yeah.
So.
And that kind of gets back to what we were talking about a minute ago with just purpose, right? And how our purpose fits
Mhm.
into God's greater purpose. It's not just about us and what we want or where we're
Right.
going in life, but God has this overarching story and this overarching plan from the beginning of time to the end of time that He is trying to or that not trying, but that He is accomplishing, right?
Yeah.
And that is the redemption and restoration of all creation, including us as mankind. So it's pretty cool. So
We could go on for highlights forever, but let's
yes.
take it. We got a question or two from the message from
Well,
yesterday.
maybe
What?
I was wondering, Mario, did you get that other video I sent you? This will be a fun way to wrap up the life conversation.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can bring.
One of the highlights that we got to do a kind of a special thing was we got to go to Universal Studios in Orlando, and that was pretty fun. And so Emma and Michaela are featured in this video, so let's check it out.
Emma, so fun. Ah! Someone's gonna steal my phone.
We're back, so we know what we're doing around here. We don't.
Well, hey, man, if it were up to me, there wouldn't be anything. So I'd just be in a bunker taking pictures with a Polaroid camera, and then Jay Inslee would be after me for sure. So
yeah.
But I love you, Governor. I love you in Jesus. I just don't love much of what you do. But let me take that back. Jay, you're a good guy. Seriously. One of my best friends in life was named Jay, but actually his name is John, but we just called him Jay. So maybe that's a whole different story. So let's move on from the governor before I get in any more trouble. Hey, we got we had a good message yesterday. We started our 5-week series on Joseph, the life of Joseph from Genesis, who comes from humble beginnings to, second in command of all of Egypt, which is an amazing story. It's almost too amazing to be true. But one thing we talked a little bit about, Tyler, the other day is that, one of the reasons you can really rest on the Bible is that if somebody was writing the Bible and just making it up, they would never put all the stuff in there that's in there. They wouldn't put up all the stories of all the messed up people. If you're trying to write, a made up Bible, you just wouldn't do that. And so Joseph comes from a family that certainly was used by God. In fact, called by God. Abraham, it went Abraham to Jacob to Isaac to Joseph. You got great grandfather is Abraham, the father of the whole Hebrew nation. And yet within that, there were lots of issues, especially through Jacob and his life. And we kind of talked about that in there. So anyways, it's just one of those things where you go, man, this got to be the truth, because you wouldn't write it any other way. But we had a couple of questions from some of our friends out there in TV land and video land. Can you run the first one? I think we had one from McKenna as well, a question from Mari. Do you have that one? Run that one for us.
Hey guys, so thank you, Mark, for your message this week. It was awesome. my question is, when you said you are more than your circumstances, what do you mean by that, and how do you explain that to someone? Because personally, I have a friend going through some circumstances, and they feel discouraged and they feel defined by their circumstances. So how would you bring encouragement to them and just show them that they are more than their circumstances? I just don't know how else to bring that to them. So do you have any advice for that?
Okay, McKenna, I think that's it's a great question because you asked it and whatever, and I mentioned it to begin with, so it really has to be a great question. But being something more than your circumstances, more than what you're in, because oftentimes we do. We look at the value of who I am. It's based on what I've done, where I come from. If I got a troubled family, then people call people garbage. They say your family's trash, you're trash, and that's what we look at. We look at those external circumstances and we make those decisions, that kind of decisions, and people do that all the time. And we can get that mindset that, I can't get out of this. I'm stuck, that wherever this comes from. And I think if you even just looking at Joseph's circumstances, here he was part of a family and then he was sold into slavery. I mean, there's this immediate turn and he ends up in a really nasty situation. And even coming up in his own growing up life, they came up with some interesting circumstances of family. But really, in the end, isn't that the heart of the gospel regarding circumstances? Jesus saves us not because we're worthy, not because we're good enough, but simply because he loves us. He calls us regardless of our circumstances. He calls us into a relationship with him. And I think when you're sharing with someone, the point is that you're sharing the gospel, because the gospel is the thing that a person then can identify that I am something more than where I was born into or what I'm doing presently. I'm valued because God says I'm of value. God says I'm important and therefore I am. And I wanted just to read even from Romans chapter 5, just a couple of verses, starting in 6. It says, for while we were still helpless at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For rarely will someone die for a just person, though for a good person perhaps someone might dare to die. But God proves his own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. When we were all messed up in the worst of circumstances, God entered our world through Jesus Christ, and he died on a cross to bring us out of those things. So I would just simply say, McKenna, it's about the gospel. If you want to give somebody hope regarding their circumstances, you share the gospel with them. You tell them who they are in Jesus Christ, and you allow the power of God, the gospel message, to bring life to them. And in the end, it's not your job to save them. It's not your job to convince them of value. It's yours to merely lay out the story. And the Holy Spirit, God himself, will do that work in a person's life. So I think that's a great question to ask, and appreciate it very much.
Mm-hmm. And if I could just add a personal example of what you are describing here is, I don't know, it was probably back in the fall or something. I sat down in a guy's office and was expressing some frustration just with some struggles I was having, and going back to the same well that I was continually going back to, of not getting enough sleep and not taking care of myself. And this guy, really wise guy, said to me that he just gave me hope, and he said, look, Tyler, you can change. You can change from this, and by the power of Christ in you. And I don't remember the exact words that were said, but I remember walking away from that, having heard the gospel in a fresh way in my life, and for my current circumstance, of what I was going through, what I was struggling with. And that was something that was powerful for me, and it's something I remembered. And if you haven't figured it out yet, it was Mark's office that I was sitting in. It was Mark that told me this. But honestly, I've looked back on that moment and thought, okay, I am not defined by my past actions, by staying up too late, by not taking care of myself, just physically, mentally, and emotionally. And I can change. I can do better because of the gospel, right? And that's what brings hope, because of I know that God is more powerful than my own sins, my own mistakes, and my own habits and behaviors, my circumstances, right? But he is able to change, and praise God, I've seen some change since then. Still working on it, still trying to grow and get better and better, but I absolutely have seen some change in those areas. And so
Awesome.
a real life example of what Mark's describing.
It really works.
Yeah.
The gospel does
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Why don't we take, we got one from Alyssa. Why don't we run that question if you can for us, Mario? And no worries. So let's get Alyssa up there and we'll see what she asks us about and see if we can't answer that.
Hey, Mark and Tyler. Thank you so much for the talk, Mark. I really appreciated it. And what you had to say, I feel like is really relevant during this time in the ever-changing and dynamic relationships within a family that we're having. And so one of the things that caught my attention was when you said that Leah missed God's love, and that how we all miss God's love sometimes. And so my question is, what do you think that looks like to miss God's love, and an example of a time that you missed God's love and how that made you feel? Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Alyssa. Appreciate that. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Tyler, for you?
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I'm kind of mulling it over. But yeah, to miss God's love. I guess I didn't completely understand what she meant by that. What do you, if you could summarize her question in your own words, Mark, what would that be?
Well, I think that God is around us and active and doing something, and Leah, was in this particular case here, she, I was looking at her life, and, she had been brought into as Jacob's wife, and it was under, he didn't think he was marrying her. He was tricked into marrying her, but he still stayed married to her. And then she, and in that culture, to have children was a huge deal. And so she actually did. And the first several children she named, their names all had something to do with her lament over her life situation. But at some point, about the third or fourth boy in, she starts telling, well, God maybe does have a purpose. But I think for me, it's really about missing the point of life. When you miss God's love, you're not centering on the fact of what it's all about. In terms of missing what God has, or that God has a purpose and a plan and something that's going on around you, and missing his love is missing, the presence of God. So is that something that you can miss? I mean, do I just miss that he's there? And I said, people seem to miss God's love all the time because they don't understand Jesus' story. I mean, God expresses its love, and I've heard it said that the clearest expression that God loves us is Jesus dying on a cross. If you ever doubt that God loves you, look at Jesus on a cross. I mean, a holy God who created it all, and we rebelled, whether we like that story or not. And people don't often like that. The world doesn't like to be told they've ever done anything wrong, but everybody has. And in one day, we'll all come to the place of going, okay, I see, God, you did in fact create it. Whether we've come of our own volition or not, we will see that God made it all and we rebelled. But when we miss that, and we miss the fact that we rebelled and it's part of our life, and we don't see that, hey, Jesus has come to bring you back into God's grace in relationship. He's come and died on a cross so that you might have relationship again. That's this clear evidence for us of missing God's love. We go about looking around in all these places thinking, what's the point? What's the purpose? What's the plan? What's it all about in life? And we miss it. I mean, you think of Pastor Dave talking about what's the point of life? Well, lots of people think the point of life's nothing, that there isn't any point at all, that we're spinning around on a rock out here in nowhere's land. We came because, I heard one atheist say it was maybe space crystals from some space alien that floated spores on the back of a space crystal onto Earth. And that's where the first life form came from. I'm like, that's all you
likely. Yeah.
Spores on a space crystal? I mean, that's garbage, man. Come on.
It takes more faith to believe that than it does that there's a God out there,
I think so. But, thinking about where I've missed, at the point where I've missed, God's love sometimes is that I have focused on my performance. Like I will look at how I do. And if I screw up in my own life and I fall into some of the sin areas that I can fall into, there's usually for me, the problem is that I got to beat myself up for a while. I got to say, well, I can't come back to God because I got to get right for a while on my own. I got to show that I can do this right on my own because, I'm nothing. I'm a bad person and God doesn't want to be around me. And I failed to realize that God would say to me, look, the time when you sin is the time when you have to come right back. I mean, we talked a few weeks back, a month and a half back, about the prodigal son. The point was the father is waiting. He's waiting for you to turn. And as soon as you turn back to him, God does all the rest. to come to. He just says, just turn your face to me and I will do the rest. And I have already shown you that through Jesus Christ. So I think in that sense that people miss a lot of that in life. They miss God's perspective towards us.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that helps me understand a little bit better too. So I apologize for my uh, confusion there, but yeah.
An
Yeah.
apology-free zone. So
Really? So I can do anything and not apologize.
right. You're in your own house.
No, but yeah, I guess for me, the times where I've missed God's love in my life is when I've been too focused on myself. And where I've been kind of what you were talking about in your message, where I've kind of been asking the question or having the perspective of, well, how does this affect me? Not really caring or thinking about what other people are going through or what God wants in this situation, but only thinking about myself and how it affects me. And so when I've had that mindset and kind of just, oh, woe is me, throwing a pity party, because this thing happened, that's when I've missed God's love. That's when I've been looking in the wrong place or just looking for sympathy or something. Then I've missed God's greater love that he is sitting there right there wanting to comfort me, wanting to provide what I need in that moment, but I'm not turning to him. I'm turning to myself or other things. So yeah, so that would be that would be kind of where I've missed God's love in my own life at those times.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
yeah.
so just as we kind of finish and wrap up here, I think I do appreciate when people have dialed into the shows that we've done and the message that we've given. I'm not sure how that's always going out, but again, you just think about it in your own as you bring up that sometimes you say one thing to somebody, they hear one thing and it makes the difference. And so I just want to encourage people to continue. It's not that these messages are miracles or magic or the greatest things ever, although they're not bad, but I encourage you to keep reaching out in whatever way. If you can do it yourself, if you can generate that gospel message and love and concern just from your own words and stuff, do it. If you got to get somebody on to something else, hey, check this out. Take a look at this. We need to be about it. I don't know how much time any of us have. Maybe it's a long time, maybe it's years and years and years, but at some point, the trumpet's going to sound. It's going to be the end of all things. And we have to, we are told to tell each other that, because a time will come when the end comes for all of us and in some form or other, and it will come. And so in light of that, knowing that, what kind of life are we going to live in the meantime? And one of the things that I know is difficult, and I want to just, especially the people who've been meeting we've been doing some Zoom groups and just talking and visiting, and we just realize how much we need each other. I realized that the other day. Again, we need contact. We need other Christians in our life to remind us of what this is all about. And so you need to stay in contact, but we need to keep reaching out, because there are countless people that don't know the way things really are. They don't really know the name of Jesus in a personal way. They don't know him. They haven't desired to know him personally, and they need to, because that is the point of it all, to really know who Jesus is and accept him for what he's done. I mean, that's kind of the point, to bring glory to God through that. So I encourage you to keep doing that. I thank you for the ways that we're reaching out and doing that. And I'm proud of all of you for doing that. Hang in there. Don't give up. No matter what you're doing, don't quit. Keep fighting the good fight. Lean into what's ahead of us, and we'll see. God's got it, under control. You don't need to worry. Concern yourself with today, because tomorrow's got enough worry of its own. So
yeah. And just to add to that, something that's, I've often put a lot of pressure on myself or guilt or shame for not sharing with people, and sometimes it's hard to. Well, I'm nervous about how they're going to respond or whatever, and so something that's helped me though is that I haven't when I realize that it's not my responsibility to make that person change or to accept Christ, that's not my job, that's God's job. That's something only the Holy Spirit can do in someone's heart and in their mind. It's nothing that I can do of my own power. My only job is to remain faithful to the gospel message and to remain faithful to what God has asked me to do, and that's to share it. So hopefully that relieves a little bit of pressure from those of you that struggle with that, and you don't have to feel like this person their eternal salvation and security is based on you and what you say in that moment. because God's going to use what you say, as long as it's true to His word and His gospel. So, so be encouraged by that. And I don't know, Mark, is there anything else, or are we wrapping up?
I want to thank Mario again for all the help, getting us online here and keeping us together. So round of applause. Thank you to Sam, a special guest. We will continue to do that. Something we talked about, adding people on for a little bit, and we will take the other side of the aisle. We don't have to just talk about sports, because we love talking about sports. This is dudes, so we got to give us our 10 minutes of that. I did actually get a message from my better half suggesting that we should move on from the sports talk, but
that's why we moved on too soon.
That's not the first time I've ever heard that, mind you, but I do respect it. So I think we've got some good young people. Maybe some of the young ladies got some, or others got a perspective that we could visit and share with, and kind of talk about some things, because we just want to bring some new things all the time to it, something that'll just kind of open the perspective of what we're sharing about and talking about. So we appreciate all parts of it. I'm grateful for Tyler, for you to be part of this, and thankful for everybody that's paying attention and watching and being part of things. So blessings to all of you.
Indeed. Yeah, Mark, and thank you. And certainly reach out to someone and share these videos, whether it's the messages or these. We know there's a lot of great content out there, better than what we're doing, but maybe there's something that can be of value in what we're doing, and you just never know how God's going to use it. So challenge you guys with that. We challenged you last week, but we do it again this week. And so, thanks, Mark, for being part of this. Thank you, Mario. And I'll leave you with a verse. I'm always going to get it mixed up. 2 Timothy.
2:7.
I don't know, 1:7, right? I'll get it one of these times. But it says that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of love, of power, and of sound mind. So let that be an encouragement to you and a peace. God bless you. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.